Good morning, everyone. We are glad you're here this morning. Our brother Barry Bovary is with us this morning. He is from Midwestern Children's Home, and he's here to speak to us on a current topic that is probably a bigger influence in our society than we realize, but we're looking forward to what Barry has to say, and without further ado, Brother Barry.
All right, we're ready to go. Well, good morning. It is a blessing to be with you. I do feel a little far away. My goal is to have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers, and I'm dropping things already. But we'll jump into this. The world we live in has gotten awfully complicated, and I think we all know what a cell phone looks like, but what we can get inundated with, even without trying. I think we all know that whoever they are, they're listening. And if you talk about swimming pools, you might start getting advertisements about swimming pools, right? They're listening, and they're not just listening. They are working diligently to get the click, to get the next step in the process. And so what we're going to be talking about is the idea of how can we really be safe on the phone and with the internet. This is overall geared to how we can help our children be safe in such ways. And I just come to you humbly. I have 4 children. My youngest will be 19 in November. And all that I can say is we made it through at least early adulthood. I do not come to you from a stance of pride. I am actually thankful that my oldest is 25, and so that meant that we were one of those weird families that we really didn't let our kids have their own smartphone, cell phone, until they got their driver's license. And I don't know that I could get away with that same parenting technique in 2025 that we got away with in, I don't know, 2013, 2014, 2015, whatever age that was back in the day. And for you millennials, I love you and respect you. For you Gen Zs, I love you and I respect you. You're going to have a whole different world of raising your children than this Gen Xer did, all right? So I come to you just from that standpoint. This is Bible class, and I believe God's Word has an incredible way to speak to the truths of today, even though they did not have cell phones back when the Bible was written. And so we're going to look at that real quickly. And I'm not here to offend, but I do believe if we're going to talk about the dangers out there, we need to at least get real a little bit. And so my goal, please, as we go through this, is to be respectful and loving, but yet dive in a little bit to the realities of what's going on out there. So let's just pause for a moment of prayer and seek God's wisdom. Father, thank you. Thank you for being just that, our Heavenly Father. Thank you for the way that you saved us through your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for the way you love us day by day, your mercies being new every morning. Father, thank you for the protection that you give, Father, for the ways that you continually provide for us in your ways, in your time, in your season. Father, thank you for the hope that we have in you, that the things of this world cannot overcome you because you have overcome this world. And Father, guide us now as we go into this study. Father, help us to be wise. as Proverbs encourages us. Help us to be about your kingdom and your ways. Father, forgive us when we sin. Forgive us when we fail. Bring us back to you. So therefore, we're so thankful for your grace and your love again. Thank you for Jesus and the life we have in him. And we pray all this through Jesus' name. Amen. So as we're in here and we're talking about phone and internet safety, again, the context that I was given for this is how do we help our kids be safe? And whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a parent, whether you have a mentoring relationship towards kids, what does that look like? And we know that Proverbs says, he who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. And I would say that, if anything, I would propose to you that I love my children. But in those times that I wasn't as consistent in discipline, what I learned from this passage is that I was not loving them, I was actually hating them. And as I stand before you, I verily cautiously bring up to you the thought of spanking, right? He who spares the rod. But as I would bring up the idea of spanking to you, I would dare say that even has something to do with somewhere along the lines that child hits puberty. That spanking might be a disciplinary measure that works, that is effective, but that when we get to the point of puberty, as a dad, I did not want to spank my teenage daughter. That was not where we were going to go. And yet it is in the teenager years that we significantly encounter teenagers. Oh, teenagers, right? And cell phones and all that brings. And we have this thing of, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And there is discipline in the world of cell phone technology. There ought to be discipline in that world. We've dealt with teenagers driving cars for much longer than we've dealt with teenagers doing cell phones. And the teenager ought to have always been afraid of, if you're not obeying mom and dad, you might lose the keys to that car for a time frame, right? And so there's discipline that comes into this as we love them. And at the very end of this, I'm going to go over some very specific measures you can do to really have an understanding of what it may mean of where your kids are at on their devices. And that may seem a lot. That might seem invasive, but we need to be out loving our children in the context of what Proverbs is sharing here. And I really thought this was a proverb. Bad company corrupts good character. Looked all over Proverbs and I didn't find it. If it's in there, please tell me afterwards, all right? But I did find it in 1 Corinthians 15. And all what I want to say to you is Paul is not talking about internet safety in 1 Corinthians 15. You can imagine that, right? He's actually not. He's got we're not going into it because we're going to stay on internet safety. So I'm actually taking this verse a little out of context when I bring it up to you in the thought of internet safety. However, truth is truth, and truth can transcend multiple situations. And so whatever the situation is, when you look at that in 1 Corinthians 15, he's not talking about how do we keep our kids safe. But I believe that we have this understanding that bad company corrupts good character. And the reality of the cell phone world is that they're in the midst of that company 24/7. When I went to school, was I bullied? I can say I faced some bullying in elementary and junior high. Some of you might say you faced some bullying back in that day. But you know what happened? When I left the school grounds and I got to my home, the bullying stopped. The bullying doesn't stop just because a kid leaves the school grounds. They call it cyberbullying. And the bullying can continue, and they can go to bed with those texts, those thoughts. They can actually, a text or whatever can come through in the middle of the night, and that bullying, that harsh treatment can come in at that point. They can wake up to a fresh bullying text the next morning. And kids have always had a great ability to be mean to one another. It's playground rules, right? The bigger kids picking on the little kids, trying who's cool and who's not cool and all of that. And the hard part with this cell phone thing is it's no longer just about where you are, but it's the messages coming through that. And our kids they have an uphill struggle that we've not had before. And so I think it really takes a lot of us well, then what are we going to do with technology? Where are the boundaries going to be set? And again, we'll get to there more in just a little bit. So I'm going to read to you Proverbs 7. Before preparing for this, I don't know that I'd ever read Proverbs 7. But I want you to think about this not in the light of a young man going out to seek a prostitute. I want you to think of this in the context of you don't have to go anywhere to be approached either in that cyberbullying mean way or seeking out, we'll say, pornography or any other thing that is not there. And this is Proverbs 7, a cautionary tale. And we'll just start in verse 1. I'm going to try to go through this a little quickly so that we get the aspect of it. But in verse 1, he says, "My son, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands and you will live. Guard my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your kinsman. They will keep you from the adulteress, from the wayward wife with her seductive words. At the window of my house I looked out through the lattice, and I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men a youth who lacked judgment. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house. At twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in, then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She is loud and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares. At every corner she lurks. She took hold of him and kissed him. And with a brazen face, she said, I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and have found you. I've covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me and pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death." You see the story of a young man being led off by this seductive mistress. And the writer here, we'll call him Solomon, says, her ways lead to death. If we, from the beginning of raising children, they reach out for that hot stove burner, right? And we're protective. We want that child to be safe. If to run out into the street where they might get hit by a car, we have to have a whole thought towards that. In my household, this scared us. The thought that they could run towards the street and get run over by a car. And so one of the things we did was we just started counting to 3 forcefully when they ran away from us. 1, 2, 3. Now early on when they were 3 or 4 or 5, there was discipline. I'm probably on the internet right now. I will say that we tried to implement biblical spanking. And in that thought, I could tell you that because of the fear of their death, we implemented spanking. So when they would run away from us towards a church parking lot, towards a street or whatever, we would count. And if we made it to 3 and we didn't dilly-dally because they're running towards danger, then they received the discipline. So I remember one Sunday at church, we're standing around, we have kind of a open sidewalk with a portico over it, and I'm talking out there, and one of my kids starts running towards the parking lot, and it's after church, and cars are moving in all kinds of different directions, and I just stopped, and I counted 1, 2, and I think it was Lydia, my oldest, but when I got to 2, she stopped and turned around and came right back to me. And every other parent sitting around was like, wow, look what he just did. I'm like, it was total fear, because we knew we did not want to go through the process of what the death of a child might look like. Well, I bring up that to you as it may not be being physically killed by a car, but what the dangers in this device can bring death. And I read Proverbs 7 may not have been a happy place for you to think about the prostitute and the seductress and how she's luring this young man to her house, to her bed. But that's what's going on out there in the world of the internet. And if you're like me, you have either clicked on something or you didn't even click on it, but the next thing you saw, you couldn't get out of quick enough of what was coming through your phone at that point in time. And I can only imagine that either it's a child that's like curious and keeps watching. They don't know the dangers. And that child could be 11, that child could be 15, that child could be 17, 18. Something they've never gone down a path towards. They're curious and they're looking at it. And what is this next step? And so as we approach this, what I'm about to give is very foundational. I didn't know any other way to start, but how do we get to the place that we can feel like there's some sense of safety around our children using the electronic devices that's in their lives? I forgot I had this slide in there, but her house is a highway to the grave leading down to the chambers of death. And that's how I want to look at this phone a little bit. That's what's at stake if we don't intervene. And I'll just say, life as parenting gets busy. I can remember nights that we had to deal with they were either at least using their phone after bedtime, and we didn't, we had the rule that you don't have your phone in your room at night. You put your phone out in the common area of the house. That's where it charges. And somehow we weren't very on it that night, and then we realized, they had their phone in their room after bedtime last night. And we had to deal with that. My kids weren't perfect. They had their struggles, and there were times we became aware of their struggles, and we had to slow down, and we had to take the time to have those conversations again. And brothers and sisters, pornography is an addictive situation. And it's difficult sometimes to just because we sin does not mean we're condemned to hell, does not mean things are over, but how do we help people through that next level? And our kids saw things that we wish they would have never seen. And we had to work through those things with them, understanding where this could lead if things really got out of control. And the hope that I want to give is just because a child has started going down a certain road, a certain path, does not mean that they're stuck on that path forever. The children that we work with at Midwestern Children's Home, they've experimented with so many different things. And yet when we can bring them in, we get the advantage of bringing them into our sterile environment. They don't have cell phone access with us. They don't have access to some of the drugs and the alcohol that they'd partaken in before they came to us. And we're able to give them kind of a clean, sterile environment while they work through some of those issues and get a big reset in life. More complicated in our homes maybe, but there's a way to help get them that reset and help them move towards this. quite honestly, there was a thought for me to have the teenagers in here, because if you do any of the things that I'm telling you that are suggestions you could do, they might get mad at you. They may not like that you've done some of the things that I've asked you to do. And at least if they were sitting in here, they would hear, well, that Barry guy told them. And they may get mad at me, not you. I don't know. But at least on this level, we can have a different level thing, and you can just be processing this without them going, what are you going to do about this? And that kind of stuff. So these are 10 basic tips that we'll go through. I'm going to try to hit a high level of these, but it really does start with basic internet safety. And that starts with passwords and multi-factor authentication. Do you guys know what multi-factor authentication is? You don't have to disagree, okay? I hate it. I don't like the fact that I got to have some other app just to get into this app. But if we're talking about what significant thing our children may get into, would it be worth those kind of things? That we might look into multi-factored authentication. And I really prefer, in the big scheme of things, if they'll just, text that 6-digit code to my cell phone, and all I got to do is type in that 6-digit code, that's not that bad. The whole Microsoft Authenticator app, I hate that thing, and I don't even know if I could really, I feel like I'm stumbling through it all the time, if you know what I'm talking about. But having things like that set up to where they have to do that gets in the land of, for them, making sure they have right passwords, making sure you have right passwords, so that if you're locking in the phone to where they can only download apps that you allow them to download, then you've got that next layer of protection as you do that. There's this idea of promoting digital privacy awareness, and that's just reminding our teenagers and that they need to, and we need to be checking the privacy settings on social media. Therefore, when they turn on those privacy settings, they limit the personal details they share with the world. They don't need to be giving out their birthday, even if that doesn't include the year. They don't need to be giving out their birthday. They don't need to be giving out their home address, because you may not want the person looking at that showing up at they may not show up at your front door, but they may show up enough that it's that thing. I mean, there have been teenagers that this is the scary part, they've met up with people they've met online, but the way they met up with them was basically in their own front yard, because they told that person where they live. That person drove up into the neighborhood, into the area, and then that was the connection point. They didn't have to go far, far away with that. And so limiting those privacy settings to where they're not putting out unallowable things. I remember when we first got our kids' email addresses, we wouldn't even let their first and last name be in that. Now, that was overkill. And everybody's gone, even if your first and last name is in your email, that's not a big deal. Giving out other personal details, making sure those privacy settings are on so that they can't do that. Number 2 and 3 kind of go, but teach the risk of oversharing personal information. So there's the idea that if you have your privacy settings on right, they can't see it through the app world. But just because you have your privacy settings not right doesn't mean that we can't just how old are you? When's your birthday? And they answer those questions. They don't need to be answering those questions, all right? Now, an outright age may not be that scary. And in fact, if they're somehow coming in contact with somebody, whatever avenue that came through, and I hate to define it too specifically because I just feel like new avenues are being created all the time. For them to put out there, I'm 14 years old, actually should be a safety measure. All right, and that 21-year-old should say, ooh, 14-year-old, that's trouble, I'm walking away. But when that 21-year-old keeps talking to them, we know we've got a problem. And if we're aware of their text or their conversations that are going on online and in those apps, or we're going to even talk about the world of conversations in games, then we're realizing too much is going on. And that idea that we're going to be checking that phone, those conversations. Cyberbullying is a huge issue. I've already laid into that just a little bit, but cyberbullying prevention measures, I'm going to give you some cyberbullying prevention measures in a little bit, but that does get into where is that cell phone at night. That gets into the idea that there may be times that they're not allowed, you're limiting the amount of time on those devices, and you're aware of what's going on with them during those time frames. So we need to teach our teens, this is a separate thought, to recognize online scams and phishing. Have any of you did the dreaded click the link that blew up your tablet, your phone, your computer? My hand is up because I did that, and my IT company got very mad at me because I was in a rush and I was checking email and I clicked on the link and it was a phish and it was a scam, and thankfully they didn't really get anything, but we had to reset systems and passwords and all of that. It was a pain in the rear. All I can say to you is that they do need to be learning about online scams and phishing. And so you may be going, I don't even know where to start that. Well, there's the basic line is there are people that just either want to steal from you, or they just want to, for whatever reason, they get a kick out of just messing with you. All right? And that those people are doing that online. And the idea of going over good basic rules with the, if you don't know where that email came from, don't click any of the links in it. I got ripped off on Facebook. I wear Brooks running shoes, and it looked like the best price I'd ever seen on a pair of Brooks running shoes in my life. And when I went to the site, it looked like the Brooks site, or it looked like it could have been that. Paid my $60, never got my shoes. Just out the $60. Right? Well, that's okay. That cost me $60. That's things. I now know that if something on Facebook makes me want to look into buying my next pair of running shoes, I'm getting totally out of Facebook, and I'm doing a search for the Brooks site totally separate from that, because clicking on links is where people gain power over you, and helping our kids understand those kind of things that they're there to, It says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's how Jesus described Satan. There are people on the internet trying to do the exact same thing. And helping our kids understand that is important. Encouraging safe social media practices. Some of these overlap a little bit, but the importance of making sure they understand who they follow. Helping them, encouraging blocking suspicious accounts or logging out of accounts when not in use. And all I want to say to you is that you need to know that our children can be really good at having multiple accounts on social media. There's the one you know of, and there's ones you don't know of. Again, we're going to get to a way to get through all of that. But if we are naive as parents to think, well, I've seen both of their Facebook accounts. If they were smart enough to create 2, they might have been smart enough to create 4. All right? I am not describing your children as evil, horrible, rotten human beings. I feel bad at this point, okay? I'm just saying that they are teenagers. They've got a lot of voices in their heads. And that idea of who's corrupting them is they're being shown things by their friends that maybe we're not always aware of. And we're trying to help protect them and guide them through that process of that. Supporting education on online predators and grooming tactics. My first exposure to the dangers of online was we brought in a deputy from a local police office, from a local police force. And one of the things that he really liked going out and busting people with drugs. He said that was my favorite thing to do. But for the safety of his community, he also spent time trying to catch online predators. And he had several profiles that he had set up of a 17-year-old. Like, this was a 50-year-old man, but he had a profile of a 17-year-old girl. And so he'd enter a chat room or he'd enter a platform, and he would look like online like he was a 17-year-old girl. And this is where, the one night, we did it twice. We did it at Midwestern Children's Home, and then we brought him into the church that I attend. And the night that he did it with the parents at the church that I attend, within 3 minutes, he had a guy propositioning him as his profile was sexually propositioning him as a profile of a 17-year-old girl. So understanding that you may be thinking that you're talking to this age person, this gendered person, and yet you have no idea who's behind that process. And that was way back in I don't know how popular chat rooms are. That was, 10, 15 years ago when chat rooms were kind of the exciting place to go and all that. TikTok is much more where our teens are at, if we allow TikTok. Instagram is much more where our teens are at. They don't even like Facebook. That's for us old fogies, okay? But making sure we're holding on to that. Advocating for secure and age-appropriate internet access. I just want to say again, I am not a Gen Z or a millennial, and I see 3 and 4 year olds with the tablet playing. I am not a hater to say your 3 or 4 year old shouldn't be playing on a tablet, but just realize there's a lot going on with that. And being aware of what all might end up coming through. And if they love Bluey, I think that's a thing. Unfortunately, people can use Bluey to bring in other things. All right, and from what I know of Bluey, there is nothing wrong with Bluey. All right, but just being aware of those platforms, and we're gonna get pretty quickly here to how we can know where they're at and what they're looking at. So, logging out on shared devices is really important. Like, I don't know that we used to, you go to the library and log in, but I don't know, in your school district, they get on a computer, or, I think anymore, they're given their own computer, and they got to keep track of that. But just being aware of when we're on shared devices, or even, that public Wi-Fi access. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in public Wi-Fi access, you may be on just that store's public Wi-Fi access. Or there could be a hacker that has basically created a dummy Wi-Fi signal in there. And when you log into that hacker is seeing everywhere you go, everything you do, and it's actually not safe. So I would really discourage you from doing things like banking or other things when you're on public Wi-Fi. You really don't know what you're connected to when you're on public Wi-Fi. At work, you've got a little more security in that because they're very concerned about the threats to them. But if you're at, McDonald's offers public Wi-Fi. For the most part, McDonald's is just trying to have you come in and buy food from them, and if you have Wi-Fi, you might buy more food from them. But we have to be aware that you can't just trust that public Wi-Fi to do all the things you might want to do. Now, if you're just catching up on sports scores, or if you like Pinterest and you're just kind of scrolling Pinterest, that's kind of the men and women split there. That's not that big a deal on open Wi-Fi. But if you were to say, ooh, I want to buy something and put in your credit card number, I would caution you on doing that on public Wi-Fi. And that's not just for teenagers, that's for all of us, okay? And making sure that you log out of those things. I would never click automatically join. Even if I go to McDonald's regularly and I tend to be on their Wi-Fi at that point, I would never click always join. Because I just don't know what that process is. I want to purposely join it. I want to purposely log out of it at that point. And then encouraging open conversations between teens and trusted adults. All I could say is raising kids has to be about a dynamic relationship. We're gonna talk more about this as we go through the day. But raising kids has to be about a dynamic relationship. And we all know our kids are not going to be perfect, right? Now, when they're 3 years old and they bite somebody, we're going to have a conversation about we shouldn't bite. And they're probably, they understand parents are going to dig into those things, and they would be kind of like, what's going on if you didn't do something with that, or if they push their friend, or even if they're not sharing their toys very well. We proactively get involved in those situations and help them understand the beauties of sharing your toys with your friends, and we create conversations around those moments. Yeah, there may be a spanking, there might be a timeout, there might be there may be other creative consequences that we get with that in that point. But I hope that beyond those things, we understand that the real power of the moment is the conversation. Now, we have a lot of conversations at Midwestern Children's Home about what is the role of discipline in creating true change. And we know that there are plenty of times that until they've suffered some of the pain of a consequence, they may not really embrace the thought of how do I go about changing my behavior. But we also preach at Midwestern Children's Home that rules actually don't change people. Rules might invoke a moment of compliance, but I can comply, but my heart can be as rebellious as I could possibly be. And what we want to be is we want to be about growing up their heart to being what we would want them to be, and not just looking for immediate obedience. Now, if my kid's running towards the crazy parking lot, I need immediate obedience so they don't get hit by a car. But that wasn't changing the heart of them. If they were going to rebelliously run away from me the rest of their life, we got a problem. Now, that would look different at 15 than it would look at 3, but we want to bring them back to the conversation. And that doesn't mean teenagers love having those heart-to-heart conversations with their parents. But what we found with our kids overall is once we had the conversation and the truth, Jesus said, the truth will set you free. When we've misbehaved, there is something about the truth coming out, and we don't have to hide the secret anymore. We don't have to carry the lie. And so there's some freedom in, Mom and Dad know the secret, this lie that I've been keeping. And there's freedom in that. There's usually some joy that comes along with that of, I don't feel as burdened by that. They don't love the consequences there. But when they've gone through the process of the truth coming out, and there's a loving parental response to that, it makes the relationship stronger. It makes the relationship be the aspect that the child loves the most. And the reality is we only have them so long. Eventually, they will be driving and we won't know, well, with GPS tracking, we might know where they are, but we're still not going to know what all they're doing, right? And eventually, I sent my kid off to Harding University and had no idea what she did day by day, except for the first day she overslept class and was like totally missed it. She actually called her mom and said, I overslept and I missed class. I'm like, well, thank you for telling us. I don't know that you're going to forever tell us when you decide to skip class forevermore at Harding University, but thank you for that relationship. But that's the kind of relationship that we want with our kids, that they want. There's like freedom and healing when we go through that. And there's that bell. I got there way too quick. So I knew I was going to get there. So real quickly, there are some phone monitoring apps that can help us with this. And I'm going to give you 3 real quickly. Covenant Eyes has been around a long time. These are all subscription services, and they cost you money. All right? Covenant Eyes has been around for like 20 years. Covenant Eyes was actually created to help people, mainly men, but people who are addicted to pornography. If this wasn't a parent-child thing, this was really for, could be teens, but adults that were trying to get out of the addiction of pornography. And so you could download Covenant Eyes onto your things, and you would have an accountability partner, and they would get a weekly report of where all you have been on your internet devices. all right? Well, if it would work for, say, a 30-year-old Sam with his buddy Ben, and they're being accountable to one another, it would work for parents and teens to do the same thing, all right? And it gives an accountability called Bark. Bark is $14 a month for the family plan. There's a $5 level, but I don't know why anybody would want the $5 level. There's actually a Bark phone. If you were thinking about, I'm going to get my kid their very first phone, there's a Bark phone that has this totally set up in it for $49.99 a month. And if you know, and that's everything to make that for this, the phone and the service that connects that phone. It all runs through Bark. And paying $50 a month for a phone, if you're paying for the phone, and there's no time commitments. You can take on the Bark phone for 3 months, and then you can turn it back in, and you're out of it, which is better than Verizon's going to give you, right? Okay? But with the Bark phone, the Bark app, it also gives weekly reports and what has gone on with wherever they've been. But it also monitors texts. We talked about cyberbullying, and the kids aren't in here, but in a cyberbully message, a message could come through from someone that is being mean to this person. There are messages that come through that literally say to that person, you should go kill yourself. That's a cyberbully text. Bark will pick up on that text, and it will send whoever's on the other side of it, the mom, the dad, an immediate message saying, I just picked up on this text. And then it lets you know your kid just received that text. And I went, wow, it monitors texting. All right. Covenant Eyes is a Christian-based ministry kind of thing that they were trying to help people with the addiction to pornography. Bark, I think, is a secular thing. It's using AI. I don't love AI. I don't hate AI. We're just stuck with it forevermore, all right? It's not going away. But it has some AI algorithms in it that helps that. And the one review that I saw, he's like, early on I was getting a lot of false alarms of, I don't care that my kid just texted this or that. But slowly it learned them better, and then they didn't have the false alarms coming through of, well, that wasn't an inappropriate text. All right. And again, Bark can be $14 a month, or you can get the Bark phone for $49.99 if that's how you want to introduce a phone to your kid. And the last one that I want to go over real quickly is there's a platform out there called Aura. I think I'm saying that right. You can do $10 for just one phone. There's a $25 family plan. But the one benefit to Aura, I mean, these all govern their Instagram account. They all govern their TikTok. They all do that. But the one thing that Aura had that the others didn't was it monitors the chat inside like 200 games. So not all games, but like 200 games, all right? Aura doesn't do text, though. So it's like, why can't one platform do everything, okay? And if you want anything, I can give you my business card. I can email you the links of the stuff that I dug up as we dealt with this kind of stuff. But there's a way for you to get to this. I was really trying to go on pace to leave room for questions, and I didn't do that with the sound of that bell. I'm going to be here all day. I'm coming back tonight for church. I get to speak with you again tonight. Please catch me if you have questions or anything. And again, I can email you the links, the things that I have with this, because this was just a high level. 45 minutes goes really, really fast when you're talking about this kind of stuff. Thank you for your attention. We have 15 minutes. I can take questions, and we'll get ready for worship. Thank you.